Good evening, everyone. I'm Kate Harrison, the Dean of the Keese School. And before we begin, I want to remind you to silence your cell phones, please. Tonight, we have Villa's resident, Lynn Richlick, and she's going to take us on an amazing journey about a cold case murder mystery. In 1991, the remains of Otzi the Iceman were discovered frozen in a glacier in the Italian Alps, and it was soon determined that Otzi had been encased in ice for more than 5 millennia. Excited scientific inquiry ensued. Lynn, who is quick to say that she is not a forensic scientist, is indeed a person with immense curiosity. She has spent many hours studying Otzi's story and is here to tell us about the fascinating information that is continuing to be revealed about this very cold case.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I will introduce you. Oh, I'm sorry. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I will introduce you to someone who was frozen in time, literally, for over 5,000 years. His nickname is Otzi, O-T-Z-I, and he's Europe's oldest naturally preserved wet mummy. Unlike the dried-out pharaohs of Egypt, Otzi was found in a melting glacier high in the Otzal Alps of Italy, which kept his body astonishingly intact. He was discovered by accident in 1991 by 2 hikers, and ever since then, Otzi has sparked scientific intrigue and public fascination around the world. Why? Because Otzi is a man of superlatives. He is the first totally intact mummy ever found with all his organs, bones, and even the contents of his last meal still preserved within him. He's also the first mummy to be found with high-quality tools and weapons, tattoos, custom-made clothes of leather and different animal skins, and he wore a dashing bearskin hat with leather chin straps. In the next 45 minutes, we'll explore who Otzi was, how he lived, and what his final hours looked like. But more than that, we'll uncover how this ancient man's discovery opened a window for us into prehistoric life. Here's our agenda: how Otzi was discovered, where he is housed today, how his discovery overturned preconceived notions of the Copper Age and changed history. We will learn about the tantalizing clues of his violent murder, and we'll close with a surprise ending. In September 1991, 10,500 feet above sea level, a vacationing couple in the Otzal Alps of Italy veer off a marked hiking path, and they stumble upon a body lying face down with the top half of it sticking out of an icy stream. They assume it's a victim of a mountaineering accident, but little did they know that they had just stumbled upon one of the world's oldest, most important archaeological finds. They run to a mountain refuge station, and both Italian and Austrian police are called because it looks like Otzi has been found right on the border between the 2 countries. An intense political dispute ensues on who owns Otzi, Italy or Austria. A few weeks later, the argument is settled by surveyors and the court. Italy won by 304 feet. However, there is a more immediate and pressing problem. Italy has no facility to house a mummy that needs to be kept at glacial temperatures, but Austria did. Austria agrees to house Ötzi until Italy builds a facility for him. Both countries agree to invite scientists from any discipline, from any country in the world, to study him. No other archaeological project has involved so many scientists from different specialties for so long. In the 34 years since Ötzi was found, 833 research scientists have studied him. On the right slide, you can see just a few of the disciplines listed. And on the left side, the rescuers have freed Ötzi out of the icy stream, and he's on his way to the helicopter to be flown to Innsbruck, Austria. Okay. So there we have that picture there where he spends 7 years. The first thing scientists wanted to know, what age was Ötzi when he died? How many years ago did he die? How old was the axe that the rescuers brought with Ötzi from the discovery site? So scientists started first, they examined Ötzi's thigh bone and used the functional units of bone called osteons to determine his age at death to be 45. Today, dying at 45 is considered young, but in prehistoric times, it was a ripe old age. Scientists then carbon dated Ötzi and his axe, and both dated to 5,300 years ago. That means that Ötzi lived 600 years before the first pyramid in Egypt was built. The age of Ötzi's body and his copper axe predated the previously assumed Copper Age by 1,000 years. The media response was overwhelming, and Ötzi captivates audiences far and wide from that point on. Here is where Ötzi is housed today. After 7 years in Innsbruck, Ötzi is returned to Italy, to the city of Bolzano. The new museum is finished. To celebrate the opening of the new museum, a full life-size mannequin of Ötzi was built to show what a man who spent most of his life in the Italian Alps looked like. So here's the mannequin. Ötzi is shown bare-chested, buff and muscled, lots of brown hair, fair skin, and blue eyes. He looked very European. He's holding a large bow, and he's wearing only a deerskin loincloth. The museum mannequin looked nothing like an alpine climber in freezing temperatures. He looked more like Fred Flintstone. During the time that Ötzi was in Austria waiting for Italy to build a facility for him, the first round of DNA research on Ötzi showed that his ancestors were a part of migration of Stone Age farmers from the region of Anatolia, which is Turkey. Which is Turkey today. This was all happening 8,000 to 6,000 years ago. During the migration, his ancestors did not mix much with other groups. As a result, Ötzi is 95% Anatolian or Turkish. So he resembled his ancestors from Turkey. Like his ancestors, Ötzi is very small-framed, on the thinner side, and wiry. He had not an ounce of subcutaneous fat on him, and he had very strong legs. His height, 5'2", his weight, 110. He had deep-set brown eyes, which he still has today, dark brown hair, and he was almost bald at the age of 45. He also had swarthy dark skin, which researchers assumed erroneously was due to decomposition. So Otzi had to be given a makeover. The original mannequin was touched up to look tired, older, and his blue eyes were changed back to brown on the mannequin. The new Otzi mannequin, you see him twice there, was given a darker complexion and he was slimmed down. The museum redressed him in reproductions of Otzi's own clothes. Now he looks every inch like an alpine explorer, superbly equipped for life in the mountains. The slide on the right side shows a reproduction of Otzi's custom-made waterproof rain cape that was found at the discovery site. Today, Otzi is housed in the museum in a cooling cell. You have to look at him through a window. Temperature is -6 degrees Celsius or 21 degrees Fahrenheit. The humidity has to be kept at 99%. This mimics glacier temperatures. On the right side slide, you see how 5 times a year, Otzi has to be sprayed with sterile water. And this covers him in an icy protective coating. The museum has a second backup cooling chamber on standby. To date, there have been more than 5.5 million museum visitors since the opening in 1998. But the museum is more than a place to view Otzi and his gear. It is a facility for international research and scientific reporting on prehistoric findings. And Italy has kept its promise to invite international scientists to come to Italy and study him. The museum receives 10 to 15 requests yearly to study him. Scientists have to be carefully vetted. The museum caretakers must strike a balance to make Otzi available for research but still protect him. Initially, Otzi had to be defrosted each time before being examined, which risks further decomposition. So the museum tech team photo-scanned his entire body millimeter by millimeter in very high resolution. 800 scans were necessary to map his entire body from the top of his skull to the soles of his feet, including internal organs. This resulted in perfect visualization of body details. No need to defrost Otzi anymore. After the examinations, scientists published their findings in professional journals specific to their discipline. These articles are also available to anyone, you don't have to be a scientist, to anyone on the museum website. Also available is a huge question and answer database from anyone who has asked a question starting from 34 years ago. Let's look at a few findings from examinations by research scientists. The early examinations by scientists working on Otzi were limited in their findings because of the use of X-ray machines rather than CT scanners, CAT scanners, which became more available within 10 years. Slide 30, Otzi's missing stomach. In the first examination of Otzi's body, no stomach could be seen on the X-ray, and the scientists doing the case hypothesized that it had dehydrated to the point of being invisible, which was a very strange comment. But anyway, several years later, during a more sophisticated and detailed CAT scan, the stomach was discovered. It was right where it should be, but pushed up under his ribcage a little bit. The discovery of Otzi's stomach was the single biggest gain for scientists, and it played a crucial role in the analysis of his murder. All right, Otzi's health profile. Here are just a few of the things that researchers have discovered about Otzi's health. he was missing a 12th set of ribs. This was not a health issue, but a genetic anomaly which fascinated the researchers. He is the first known human to have heart disease. He had terrible tooth decay, which contributed to the heart disease. He is the first known case of Lyme's disease. He had terrible lactose intolerance and type O positive blood, which was discovered by one of the genome results. Otzi's discovery and the examinations that followed provide us with insights into the diseases that were prevalent during the time that Otzi lived. By discovering Otzi's many ancient infections, we have learned that today the diseases are much older than we previously thought. Lyme's disease, heart disease, gallstones, they are still with us. Otzi had 61 tattoos all over his body, and no, they were not the names of his girlfriends. They are in the forms of crosses, arrows, and parallel lines. Was Otzi part of a cult? Scientists originally thought that might be the case, but they soon realized that the fine incisions were part of a pain-relieving acupuncture treatment because the tattoos are located on main acupuncture lines that are still used today in treatment. These are fine cuts into which pulverized charcoal was rubbed. This tells us that acupuncture was being practiced 2,000 years earlier than we previously thought, and it offers valuable insight into the beliefs and practices of the Copper Age. Here is a slide showing scientists who returned to the discovery site to retrieve Otzi's remaining possessions. Otzi had many items in the campsite he had set up. Every one of those items is on display in the museum. Because of our time constraints, I'm going to discuss and show you just a few of Otzi's possessions, which proved crucial in forcing a change in historians and archaeologists' previously held beliefs. Otzi's axe was the most important object among his possessions. It is unique, it is the oldest, it is the only perfectly preserved prehistoric axe in the world. The axe blade was cast from a mold. It is almost pure copper, 99.7%. The ore for the blade was traced to San Carlo, a small town in southern Tuscany, 400 miles away from where Otzi lived. How did he get it? Who made it? The axe was considered an extraordinarily wealthy item for the time. Researchers initially assumed that it was an emblem of rank, a status symbol. Maybe Otzi was a warrior or a chieftain, and it would be only for the elite to carry. But we know that Otzi used it frequently, evidenced by the wear on the axe blade. So his copper axe blade proved that metal working was already being practiced, and the high purity of the copper suggests advanced craftsmanship and a sophisticated understanding of metallurgy. Otzi's deerskin quiver. The slide at the top shows Otzi's deerskin quiver, which held 14 arrow shafts with 2 arrowheads still attached. The arrow shafts were fletched. Fletching are aerodynamic stabilizers. They were made of bird feathers in Otzi's time, but are made of plastic today. You can see the feathers in the lower right slide. They are attached to the arrow shaft. The purpose of fletching is to improve the arrow's stability and accuracy in flight. Fletched arrows have never been found on any prehistoric arrows, regardless of the age, the area, the location. The materials for his arrowhead and flint were traced to Trentino, an Italian province miles away from where Otzi lived and hunted. Once again, we ask ourselves, who made them? How did he get them? When Otzi was discovered, scientists' general belief was that this area of the Italian Alps was still in the Stone Age, or maybe just emerging from the Stone Age. They were unaware and totally amazed at the technological advances already made by the population in this region of Italy. The elaborate fletching of his arrows demonstrates a level of new expertise previously unknown. So there had to be long-distance trade networks and the movement of goods during the time that he lived. Trade networks point to a degree of social stratification, with individuals like Otzi possessing valuable and prestigious items. I like to think that this was the beginning of Amazon Prime delivery. Okay. All right. In the subsequent excavation of the area where Otzi was found, researchers retrieved Otzi's clothing. He had a multi-animal skin coat, a rainproof cape, which I think you've already seen, deerskin leggings, a brown bear fur hat, and thermal shoes. Yes, Otzi is the only mummy known to have thermal shoes. His clothes were custom made. How do we know that? Sewing machines were not yet invented. We know they were custom made by the difference in the hand stitching among every bit of clothing he owned. So here's Otzi up there wearing his animal skin coat. And you can take a look at his feet. There are the famous thermal shoes. Researchers captured the DNA markers in samples of these original animal skins. And the result of the genetic analysis of that was that the animal skins came from local domestic or wild animals, such as deer, goats, pigs, cows, brown bears, sheep. These are the same animals that still roam the hills and valleys today where Otzi lived. So we can say Otzi shopped locally and supported small business. Who was this man? There's a picture of Otzi sketched there by a museum artist, and if you see, there is a pattern of the way the skins were put together. The carefully selected and coordinated animal skins used for Otzi's clothing suggest a level of personal identity and status beyond the ordinary. While his specific role in society is still debated, the presence of his axe, the quality of his clothing and equipment, all strongly indicate that Otzi was a man of considerable standing and influence within his ancient society. The takeaway consensus among historians is that Otzi was definitely not a farmer, even though the valleys where he lived all his life were farming settlements. Whatever else he was, the Iceman was a mountaineer. His very clothing and his tools proclaim as much. He has been relabeled as a member of a more highly developed culture at that time, rather than part of a more primitive culture. Otzi's last hours. For 10 years after his body was discovered, no one was aware he was murdered, but everyone who worked on him noticed his significant injuries. In 2001, scientists using a CAT scan unexpectedly saw an arrowhead lodged in his left shoulder. The clues pointing to his murder had always been recorded in the museum's database, a result of all those published findings we've been talking about. the findings of teams of scientists who worked separately from different disciplines at different times in different years. So it would have been virtually impossible for any individual researcher to put together a logical and sequential unfolding of how Otzi ended up murdered and under a glacier for 5,300 years. Otzi is now not only an archaeological find, but also a murder victim, which by Italian law requires the initiation of a forensic inquiry. Otzi's murder is officially a super cold case. But it was unlikely that Italy would enforce the law, since Otzi is a prehistoric victim. But scientists, researchers, historians, the public kept demanding to know what happened to Otzi. So, 16 years after the arrowhead was found, the museum enlisted the services of Alexander Horn, a renowned German cold case investigator of the Munich Police Department, who also specializes in behavioral analysis. Piecing together the parts of the puzzle. On the right, you see Detective Chief Inspector Alexander Horn. He and his team made an on-site inspection of the crime scene. They conducted several ballistic reenactments of the murder, and they drew on the extensive research already done by multiple scientists over the previous 26 years. Horn's team paid particular attention to the detailed analysis of the injury on Otzi's right hand and his stomach contents. Both proved crucial to the inspector's theories. Okay, piecing together the parts of the puzzle. Here are the pieces of the puzzle that DCI Alexander Horn and his team were able to put together about Otzi's final days and his murder. We're going to do it in chronological order to understand better what happened. Puzzle piece number 1, 2 parts there, digestive tract and the timeline. Puzzle piece number 2, hand wound. Puzzle piece number 3, Otzi's weapons. Puzzle piece number 4, the shoulder bruise. Puzzle piece number 5, the arrowhead. And puzzle piece number 6, the skull fracture. Okay, so the puzzle piece number 1, the 2-parter, analysis of the contents of Otzi's digestive tract showed us where he had been over the 2.5 days before he died. This slide shows the last 3 locations where Otzi was before his death. You see it on the very right, you see a number 1, and that is a pine forest at an altitude of 6,500 feet. Number 2 is lower, to the left, a valley at 3,900 feet, which, by the way, was where Otzi lived, right there in that area. And number 3, a high mountain at 10,500 feet, where he met his death. Okay? So, day 1, puzzle piece number 1. Otzi was first on the mountain at 6,500 feet, just below the timberline in a forest of pine trees. How do we know this? Because at this location, Otzi ate a meal outdoors. The cells and spores of the pine tree drifted onto his food and was ingested with his meal. The remnants of what he ate is mixed with the pine pollen that is still in his intestine. If you follow the red arrow line from 6,500 feet, it ends in his intestine there at a lower point. Okay? It was likely in this pine forest that Otzi was in a violent fight and received the severe defensive wound to his right hand, which you will see shortly. We'll get back to his hand injury very soon. Okay, we're on day 2 of puzzle piece number 1. Otzi then descended to the valley floor at 3,900 feet, which was a warmer zone where the yellow hop hornbeam pollen was flourishing. He had another meal there and again ingested the local pollen. The remnants of both are still in his intestine. Now, if you follow the arrow over there, it ends in a higher portion of his intestine. Each of the pollen's location in Otzi's intestine indicates a timeline of his last journey. Each of the pollen is native to the area where Otzi traveled. While he was in the valley where he lived, Otzi resupplied himself with food, clothing, medicines, and materials to repair his damaged weapons. It appears he intended to remain high on the high mountain for an extended period. Okay? And day 3. Within 12 hours of his descent into the valley, Otzi hiked even farther up the treeless, ice-covered mountain to an altitude of 10,500 feet with his full load of supplies. The investigative team theorized that Otzi was escaping in a frantic final climb because he changed altitude rapidly over 48 hours. The glacier area where Otzi set up his last campsite was a very remote area and was not a place where you would randomly run into each other. Otzi was resting after his final meal, consisting of wheat, red deer, and ibex goat bacon. These foods are still in his stomach, undigested. If you follow the arrow, it ends in his stomach, and that's where the food is. So, puzzle piece number 2, Otzi's hand wound. Otzi's deep cut, you're looking at his hand there, right there. Otzi's deep cut defense wound on his right hand was inflicted while he was trying to defend himself against a knife-wielding opponent. The cut was made between his thumb, his right thumb, and his forefinger, all the way to the bone. The hand wound was no longer fresh at the time of his death, but it had not yet completely healed. When we have a deep cut wound, our body releases a specific chemical called hemosiderin, which appears during a certain stage of wound healing as it's breaking down the clotted blood. This makes it possible to tell how old a wound is. In Otzi's hand injury, hemosiderin was still present. Therefore, the investigation team knew that the hand wound was inflicted on Otzi about 2 days before his death, which places him in the pine forest at 6,500 feet on day 1. All right. Puzzle piece number 3, weapons needing repair. Notice how Otzi's bow, shown in the upper left corner of the slide, is missing its string. His knife and axe, shown next to the bow, were not sharpened. His quiver and its contents were undersupplied. There are only 2 arrow shafts intact with arrowheads and the fletching in place, but I don't think you can see it on that picture. But his bow, missing its string, wouldn't be able to fire them. 12 unprepared arrow shafts were still in the quiver. These are remarkable omissions for a skilled mountaineer, especially for someone heading into a remote area alone and defenseless. Otzi was right-handed. The investigative team assumed that Otzi's injured right hand likely slowed him down in making repairs to his equipment. Puzzle piece number 4, the bruised shoulder. You are looking at Otzi lying face down. Notice where you see a modern-day metal probe on the lower left side of his shoulder. The probe is tracing the trajectory of the arrowhead, following an internal path that leads to the arrowhead. There is still a significant purple-brown discoloration on Otzi's shoulder. It was not until the arrowhead was seen on the CAT scan that the shoulder bruise was recognized as the entry point of the arrowhead. Puzzle piece number 5, the arrowhead. Notice the yellow circle on the upper right corner of the slide. That's the CT scan. Otzi must have apparently felt safe enough in his remote campsite high on the mountain to take the time to prepare and eat a large meal, his last. This gave investigators the impression that Otzi was not in a rush, didn't feel threatened, was maybe no longer appeared to be fleeing from somebody. The murderer, however, knowing that Otzi was unlikely to win hand-to-hand combat because of that hand injury, followed him up the mountain, caught him by surprise, and shot that fatal arrow. It was an apparent ambush. Alexander Horn's team surmised that the killing up on the high mountain glacier was probably the continuation of the hostile encounter that took place earlier in the pine forest. Here is a sketch from a museum artist showing how Otzi was ambushed. The investigation team, using ballistic evidence, reenactment, and reasoning like that used today by CSI investigators, determined that the arrow that killed Otzi was shot from 30 yards away. Otzi was standing, facing away, and the perpetrator was likely positioned lower than Otzi, maybe kneeling or a little bit downhill. The medical evidence suggests that the attacker, positioned behind and below Otzi, fired a single arrow that struck the iceman's left shoulder blade, precisely the area at which hunters still aim to bring down game with one shot. The trajectory of the arrowhead and the anatomical target below and to the left caused the arrow to go clean through to sever Otzi's left subclavian artery. This artery is the main circulatory pipeline carrying fresh oxygenated blood from the heart to the left side of the body. Otzi was shot in a way that caused massive internal bleeding without immediate visible external trauma. Blood was not visible on the outside. Only a heavy purple bruise was left on his shoulder. This supports the idea of a precise and intentional strike. Horn's team was also convinced that the person who shot Otzi is the same person who pulled the arrow shaft out of his shoulder, leaving behind the stone arrowhead lodged deeply within his body. The arrow shaft has never been found. They theorized that the attacker took the arrow shaft with him to avoid being linked to the murder. Otzi's distinct, valuable possessions, like his copper axe, remained at the crime scene, so theft has been excluded as the motive. How much did Otzi suffer? How quickly did he die? Is a question frequently asked by his fans. The answer? Otzi suffered a mercifully quick death in a few minutes. Using the latest forensic investigation tools, nanotechnology, an atomic force microscope, and Raman spectroscopy, the investigative team, along with forensic doctors, discovered the chemical fibrin around the arrowhead. Fibrin is what causes blood clotting to close the wound in the event of an injury, but fibrin disappears very quickly after the process of clotting starts. Finding fibrin still in the arrow wound today is confirmation that Otzi died very quickly after the arrow shot, likely within a few minutes. Thus, Otzi's official death certificate today states his cause of death as blood loss due to a severed artery caused by an arrow shot. Puzzle piece number 6, the fractured skull. You are looking at the back of Otzi's head. Looks like a cracked egg. Before the arrowhead was discovered, scientists theorized when they saw this that Otzi probably slipped and fell and hit the back of his head on a rock, fracturing his skull. The investigative team believes a much more likely explanation was that the killer intentionally struck Otzi's head with a rock as he was lying face down following the arrow shot. The blow was meant to finish him off. The perpetrator may have been unsure if the arrow shot was fatal, since the massive bleeding from the severed artery inside him was taking place internally and was not visible. From the behavioral analysis point of view, Alexander Horn concluded that the reason for Otzi's murder was some sort of strong interpersonal conflict situation, a behavioral pattern prevalent even today in the bulk of murder crimes. Are you ready for a surprise? Otzi has relatives. 19 men who currently live in the Tyrolean Alps region are related to Otzi. Researchers wanted to trace population movement in the Italian-Austrian Alps over multiple generations, and they wanted to see if any males alive today are tied genetically to the mummy. So 3,700 male blood donors turned up and donated their blood for DNA analysis. Gene researchers made the link by tracing a very rare genetic mutation found in Otzi that is passed down along the male line. These men are not likely direct descendants, but they are related through a common ancestor who lived at least 400 generations, or about 10,000 years ago. There's a curious twist to this story. The study was conducted in 2013, but the 19 men who are Otzi's relatives are unaware that they are related to him. They have never been told of their genetic connection to the world's most famous mummy. Why not? The response given by the Institute of Forensic Medicine: ethics. Okay, here's how I see the story of Otzi. Like a really good murder mystery novel, Otzi the Iceman has released the secrets of his past, one clue at a time, over 34 years. And remember, those clues were not given in a nice and neat chronological order. Perhaps half the magic of Otzi's story is in the mystery. Whoever he was in life, he continues to have a profound influence in death, as Otzi's body and his tools teach us the secrets of his era. While his death raises questions, his body answers more. One thing is certain: the mystery of Otzi's death will continue to capture our imagination. Thank you, and I'm...
What month of the year do you think he was killed?
He was supposedly killed in late spring, early summer. And that's how they tell, because of the pollen, when that pollen is active. So he was discovered by the hikers in the fall of '91, but he did die early spring to late summer, someplace in there.
Lynn?
I'm sorry? Oops, somebody else?
I have a medical question. It probably is not something that you may have come across, but blood goes someplace. Everybody knows when you break a hip, the hip joint swells. And since there wasn't any time for absorption because he died quickly, I was surprised that they didn't find more CT evidence of the blood, or what we call a hemothorax, where blood goes into the chamber where the lung is. So is there more information about the CT scans that might be helpful in this?
The CT scans, if you remember, the first 10 years. Oh, I'm sorry. The first 10 years, they weren't using CT scans. They were using just X-rays. And from what I understand, they were pretty bad till you just use a regular X-ray. It wasn't until the use of CT scans became more popular that you could see more. There wasn't in any of the journals and stuff that I've read that anybody said, what is all this stuff? That if the artery was severed, there was a lot of blood had to be flowing inside. You have to understand that, I don't say this meanly, but a lot of the scientists, and a lot of them had medical backgrounds, they were kind of like living in silos if they came to study botany. Let's say it was a bunch of scientists who requested to come and examine him, but their focus was botany. They weren't looking at anything but for plants, that kind of thing. That's why I think by being in their little silos and writing up their reports and stuff, different disciplines at different times. All right, like let's say one time it's in May, a bunch of people come in and they look just for what they want. They're excited. They go home, they write their physical reports. It goes into the database, all right? Then the next month, maybe another team comes in. They are lung specialists. Want to see that? They should have, if they were, they should have seen that arrowhead. All right. So it's not very joined, and that's why I was saying somebody should have seen all these injuries at some point, but they were here for certain things. The timeline and the discovery of the pollen in his stomach, that was done by somebody called an ethnobotanist. A bunch of them came, all right? It didn't worry them if they saw somebody's head cracked or anything. Nobody put anything together. So it was very disjointed, and it still is, because it's not done in order. It's not like, okay, month of April, we will have only lung doctors here, or we're only going to have the historians who want to come and look at his equipment. It's very mixed up, okay? So that's why I think they missed a lot of what else. And then the tech team, they worked on his scan. They had to have seen it, but these are computer people. They're not going to see a big puddle of brownish red stuff and worry about it. So I think that's why things got missed. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's been a fascinating story, but what drew you in particular to study this in such detail as you obviously have?
Oh, I'm kind of a mummy person. I obsess about when I get interested in something, look out. I just enjoy murder mystery. Well, I just enjoy mysteries and solving things and what I think about them. But if I hear the word murder, I'm on it. So, I see a hand. Oh, here's one too.
Maybe you answered this question and I missed it, but how did Otzi get his name?
Otzi, we don't really know his name. This is a nickname that a journalist gave him. I think he was Swiss or some European country up there by the Alps, but he was found in the Otzo Alps. So instead of saying the mummy from blah, 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 they just named him Otzi, but that is an American pronunciation. Kate, go ahead and tell me how he... It's Otzi if you're German. Okay, Otzi. But I like him as Otzi.
Lynn, that was a fascinating talk, thank you. But my question is this, has Otzi's entire DNA genome been sequenced? And if so, is it in a database somewhere where those 19 people could, on their own, search for it?
It's the DNA would not be in, I think, would not be available to the average person who just signs up. I mean, you can go home tonight and get on the database, and you can find almost anything you want to know. But I think because they have not let the guys know, they haven't seemed to press for it. I feel that the fact that it was on the male line may have, the findings that caused them to shut down this whole thing about that was because it might be a very personal thing, and do you want to let the whole world know about 19 young men who have something perhaps reproductive? I think it's I've thought about it, it's a private issue, and I guess ethics would be that you owe these people some privacy. You know, and you can get it, I'm sure, if you get hold of the people who were doing the DNA on him. A lot of DNA studies were made on Otzi. That's my take. So I try not to get annoyed because I'd love to know who are they?
You mentioned that there were a lot of bacteria and so on the body. Do they speculate whether he was actually ill, or was this just normal bacteria that we pick up?
It's hard to say because there was a report on him that there's a method of DNA studies that they call ancient DNA studies, and that's, this guy's body was out in nature, and then they jackhammer him out of the ice and bring him home. And they actually had to abandon a lot of the DNA testing that they did in the beginning because it showed one of the researchers' DNA. Okay, so they had to abandon all that. So once they got another team in who were a little more professional and stuff, they found more. So, you got to watch out for the dirt. This guy's 5,300 years old. So, there's another hand there.
Why wouldn't animals having torn at the body? Why is it intact? Because
what happened, what they think is why he was so perfectly preserved, was he gets shot, he falls, and right there is a stream. He falls into that stream, okay? And then it must have started to snow. So he was covered with snow quickly, is the way the scientists think, which meant there was no birds around to get to his eyes. There was nothing else in that very abandoned area. No animals running around to grab him and take advantage of him. So his body was preserved with heavy snow and then ice, and then the glacier was rolling over him, more ice. And that's where he was built, it was built up over him. So he was perfectly encapsulated with ice for 5,300 years.
That was really fascinating. I have done a little research on John Franklin's search for the Northwest Passage. And when his ship was beset by ice and he died, his crewmen left the ship. And they died trying to go away. So they just fell where they were walking because they were emaciated. And so I've seen photographs of them buried in ice since about they left England in 1845, so maybe 4 years later, they died. And they learned a lot from studying their bodies. Parks Canada goes down there almost every summer to do research on their bodies. Their eyes were wide open, and you can see their teeth, and they all had TB, or most of them did. They were in very pitiable condition, but they did learn a lot from studying them.
Yes.
Much more recent than your story.
Yes. Go ahead.
Could you tell us what resources you've used for this presentation? Is it one book? Is it several journals?
I need a new house to store all my notes on this. If it's got the word OTS, I'm sorry, I'm not a mic person. If it's got the word OTSI anywhere on that cover of the magazine, I read it. So it's hundreds of magazines. You can go online also. There's scientific journals, and some of them do cover mummies and, that kind of archaeology and stuff. So.
We have time for one more question. If we've got someone right there.
Okay, is it my turn? The amount of information collected is really astonishing. We know where he started from. In a few days, he ended up at 10,000 feet. There are no animals there to hunt. Is there any evidence to think that he might be perhaps trying to cross the Alps, or any speculation? Where was he going, basically? What was he trying to do?
He was probably escaping from the people that he ran into in the pine forest, because we know he was there, and we know that was the first place he ate by what was left in his intestine. Okay, so I think he may, because he was a mountaineer, and by the muscles in his legs, you knew he was a walker, which the scientists saw that immediately. So he had a place to escape to that perhaps only he knew about. It was, even today, that area is not accessed. There's a walking path for vacationers and stuff to take, but they veered off, and that's why they fell over him, So. Thank you. You're welcome.